All right, we're gonna give you some tips here. Everybody ready for some tips? How about you, Noel? You ready for tips? Hey, did that test beating you up?
Hamstrung.
Okay. He's a real ball of fire, isn't he? Okay. This 2001 Mazda 626 illuminated the malfunction indicator light and through a code. It was a PO421. Okay, so who knows what a PO421 means?
Ain't 4 emission? No, 3 emission. 4 is,
That's a catalytic converter code.
Warm-up cat.
Yeah, my car has this one code.
Your car got the same code, doesn't it? So, this one can be stored by the powertrain control module when the catalyst efficiently drops below a certain threshold. So, how do you know, if you're looking at a scan tool, if catalyst efficiency is not what it's supposed to be?
The downstream oxygen sensor.
Yeah, exactly. What's going on? Downstream oxygen sensor
Not
is
lazy.
switching at the same rate as the upstream oxygen sensor. The downstream is supposed to be lazy, the upstream is supposed to be really, it's actually measuring the oxygen storage capacity of the catalytic converter. Now, it doesn't always mean you got a bad catalytic converter just because you're seeing that. Sometimes there's other things. Sometimes the catalytic converter's got crud coating it, like, you know, there's all kinds of reasons it can happen. So you gotta make sure that the engine's running like it's supposed to before you condemn the catalytic converter. If there's soot coming out the pipe and all, it may have hydrocarbons, you know, fouling on the catalytic converter, that kind of stuff. Anyway, the CO2, we want the catalytic converter, if everything's working like it's supposed to be, CO2 will be behind everything else is low. CO2 is what we breathe out. There's nothing wrong with CO2. Remember what I was telling you yesterday? If you took 100,000 molecules of atmosphere, only 35 of that is CO2, and only one of those 35 is man-made, right? So CO2 is not a problem. But another reason, you're looking at your grass along the side of the road just grows just as green. You notice that? You know why? Because it loves that CO2 coming out of the exhaust pipe on the car. All right. What's going on there? That stupid thing right there. We got something going on there. A code PO421 may mean the catalytic converter is no longer functioning, oxygen sensor is not reading properly, or a spark plug failed. You know, there's got some stuff going on here. Now, scan tool users will recognize that upstream oxygen sensor pattern, and there's the downstream one right here. Get that thing in the air, and I don't know how much fuel is in it, but we're going to put a fuel pump in it. We're going to put a starter on it, okay? So go ahead and get it up in the air. All right, so now, this one here wasn't storing oxygen the way it should. Now, this downstream sensor pattern seems more subdued. It still has the same amplitude. See that? Now, that's a crappy picture, but you're just going to have to live with it, best I can do, right, on this particular car. This particular car came to me from a girl that was up front, and she said, you know, my car's got a check engine light. Turned it and flipped it on, got the code, and I says, you know, this catalytic converter is covered under warranty, so go to the dealership and let them fix it, you know, because there's no point in us spending her money on it. So she went over there and got that done, wheeled back into the shop, check engine lights back on, same code. Alright, so here's what the deal was. The catalyst was one they had replaced. It obviously has no sensors monitoring. This is right here. They put this one here, the one that was back down the pipe a ways, you know. There's not an oxygen sensor in front and behind it, so you know that ain't the one it was monitoring. But they just snagged it and popped that one on there. And I did encounter this at the dealer one time whenever I worked on one that was a similar vehicle. It was a Ford Contour, I guess. And I pulled the code and I says, I went and told the parts department to order a catalytic converter for it, and they ordered that one. And when it came in, they gave the job to a guy on the line down there, and he just popped the catalyst on it and put it on the yard, and it came back. And then I said, wait a minute, the catalyst we needed to order was the one that's monitored on both sides by oxygen sensors. That's the warm-up cat. That warm-up cat is the one that's coming right out of there. They put it real close to the exhaust so it'll get really hot really fast, because it needs to. And this is a warm-up cat, it's a different kind of warm-up cat, okay? You know, see. But anyhow, if you do a Google search for warm-up cats, you'll see a kitty cat sitting there doing this. Anyway. While the 30421 won't affect the engine power, the rear O2 signals can affect the fuel trim. But remember that. The rear oxygen sensor can affect the fuel trim on the front. If it's trying to keep that catalyst happy, it's liable to jack the fuel trims around and try to fix what it can't fix any other kind of way. If, in other words, if it can't trust the front O2 sensor, it may go do what the back one's telling it to do. So be prepared for that. A lot of people will argue with that and don't know it, but there's been some, I went to a class one time where they said they had actually tricked it out and made it think that the oxygen sensor, you know, they unbalanced the oxygen sensors, and it started figuring fuel trim with the back sensor, total fuel trim, you know, you add all that together to it. Well, we're not gonna go into that right now. But be careful in condemning the catalyst for loss of power. Not all the tests are reliable. All right, the temperature check is one that we can do right here. Let me see if I've got, let me see if that's a video. I think that's a video, I think. Thermometer on a chute bank 1, I'm reading 182. A chute bank 2, I'm reading nearly 300 degrees. I'm thinking that we got a catalyst that's partially clogged. All right, we're going to go up top. Well, the top of the catalyst, we're shooting 400 degrees coming out of the catalyst. Coming right out of the engine, so you're expecting it to be pretty hot. You can see what we're doing there. All right, let me get past this. All right, now you expect the exhaust to be hotter right where it's leaving the head. The logic of that warm-up cap temperature, that's a warm-up cap right there. If the catalyst is working, the temperature reading from the outgoing gas should be a good bit higher because of the chemical reaction that's going on with the catalytic converter. If the catalyst is partially plugged, the engine side of the converter will be hotter or the same temp in the temp as the coming reading. So, you know, you kind of expect this to be hot. But usually, it ought to be hotter coming out of here than it is going in, particularly if it's got a pretty good bit of pipe between it and the engine. You know, it's sort of dicey trying to figure that out. Now, here's what Walker has to say. Walker is the one that makes these replacement caps. The catalytic converter's rear weld ring temperature is directly related to the amount of work the converter is performing. So therefore, see, as it works, it gets hot. And an elevated temperature may indicate an emissions issue, if it's really hot. All right, so if the rear weld ring is significantly cooler than the front, the converter may not be lighting off. And this may indicate, see, it's actually a chemical reaction that's got to be done with heat in there. This may indicate the converter has failed or the exhaust mixture is not correct, a symptom of an underlying emissions issue. Now, if the converter temperature will not exceed 1200 Fahrenheit on a properly run engine. This is Walker talking now, so remember this. Periodic operation above 1600 may negatively affect the precious metals coating the substrate. That thing's doing a lot of hard work, and so basically that's what you're looking to understand. A lot of the scan tool, the Android radio I got in there is a scan tool, and I can actually monitor catalyst temperature driving down the road on my vehicle. A lot of your scan tool will give you catalyst temperature. You might even notice that in the ones that we use out here in the shop. Excessive temperatures can reduce the converter's durability if high enough destroy the matting or substrate. Too hot is bad. That's actually, I've seen them glow red, you know. Damaged matting and melted substrates occur at temperatures going over 1700. And have you ever seen one that looks like that? That typically, according to Walker, that means it's been too hot at some point because it's got gunmetal blue, you know. Bronze blue rainbow discoloration typically indicates elevated temperature. If the converter is removed, look through the substrate to observe whether the small passageways are melted or collapsed. Get up there and grab that catalytic converter that's laying up behind you on that shelf. All right, can you look into that catalytic converter and see how them little holes are clogged? Not that one, the other one, yeah. That one's stopped up. Then we pulled that off of a Trailblazer or the GMC equivalent to it. Look in that converter. One side looks like it's supposed to, the other side is clogged. I want everybody to look at that while I'm going through this. All right, is temperature testing always accurate? Now, if the cat fails a temperature gun test, hotter at the inlet than the outlet, it's a lot more certain than if it passes. Now, I've actually seen them pass the temperature test and still be a bad cat that was choking the engine. All right. The Monte Carlo right here would only run 45 miles an hour top speed. But anyway, it was awful. It passed the temperature gun test. We had about 200 degrees going in and about 440 coming out. And the vacuum gauge test didn't produce a smoking gun. If vacuum stays low on an unloaded engine with the throttle open, it points to an exhaust problem. Now, we were drawing on the muffler shop method. We drilled a 1/8 hole in that particular time, whenever we were working on this one, we didn't have a way of measuring. Now you got this little fitting, I got y'all screwed in there where the oxygen sensor goes, where you can measure pressure, whenever the threads don't come out with the oxygen sensor, right? But you know the one that we got over there, in that other campus did that same thing? And, I mean, it actually came apart.
You talking about this motor over here? Or
Huh?
you said
No,
motor?
I mean, over there in the morning, actually, we were screwing and one out to do that same job because they're taking engine performance, and the threads came out with the oxygen sensor. It doesn't usually happen, but I saw it twice really fast. Anyway, we drilled a 1/8 hole right in front of the converter and used a cheap fuel pump pressure vacuum gauge and found this. Now there's Jesse. Jesse was all stressed out because see how much pressure that thing had? This is what it looked like when we pulled it off of there, but it passed the temperature test, believe it or not. And had we stopped with the temperature test, we wouldn't have found this one so quickly, but when we drilled it in front of the catalyst, held that hose just flat up against that hole, and it pegged out. You know how much pressure it ought to have? This is 0 pressure. That's vacuum, this is pressure. It should have none. None. If it's got more than about a pound or two, that other one I passed around, you guys were looking at, you know how much pressure it had? 5 PSI. And see that thing, it didn't peg the gauge, but it had 5 PSI, and you could feel the power loss. We put another one in there. And you know, didn't the other day we welded a catalyst?
Yeah, that Buick, that
on
one.
that
In that Buick, yeah, and to fix that Buick, we actually had that same problem. All right, new catalytic converters can sometimes come with an 18mm plug where the O2 sensor goes. It's kind of what I got here. Keep the plug if you get your hands on one. Drill a hole through it, put a brake bleeder screw in it, which is what I did. So that gives you a place where you can put a hose on it. Now you got a tool you can use to check exhaust back pressure. Summit Performance sells these O2 sensor hole plugs for $6. Won't cost you much if you just want to buy one. You probably order one from a parts store. This vehicle may not start. You might remember that story I told you. I've told it several times in here about the guy in the next service bed working on one of the Mercurs. I put a Facebook post the other day, said if you find a Mercur XR4 Ti sitting in a barn, leave it there. But anyway, the point is, this thing right here wouldn't have started, and I told him to take 3 of the spark plugs out and try to start it, and when he did, it fired up, but it was, you know, pushing exhaust out the spark plug hole. It wouldn't start with all the plugs in. He took 3 of the plugs out and it fired up. And he said, I don't even know what that means. I said, that means the catalytic converter stopped up. The engine's breathing, you know, out the holes over there. And anyway, he found a clogged exhaust. Now, with loss of power, homemade steel gas tanks, like these you see at the farm, you know, my company used similar in Texas, except it was a tall, skinny one. The 79 LeBaron, I drove back from Dallas in 1980, had a clogged tank up spring. What I did was, you know, we had this car that headed out, and he says, this car's broke down at Dallas Love Field. He says it'll drive it a ways, it'll quit running, and he'll have to let it sit there for a little bit, and then it'll drive ways away, quit running, and so I flew up there on a plane, and when I was working down there in Texas, you could fly from Beaumont to Dallas on Southwest Airlines for $18. That's all it cost for a plane ticket. And I flew up there, and I took a few tools with me and all, and actually got the car, and I started back, and I drove about 100 miles, and I started losing power, and I said, that's a fuel problem. And so I coasted into a gas station, and I took the gas cap off and borrowed the guy's air hose and took the fuel tank. You know, this is because they had a carburetor and a regular fuel pump, you know, and I blew backwards into the tank, and, you know, it fixed it. Because what was wrong, I found out, that big steel gas tank the company was using had a little bit of rust that had got in there, and it clogged the screen. And you parked the vehicle, and this rust would float away from the screen. Then as it started picking it up again, it would clog the screen again. Anyway, but imagine that, you know, here it was, you know, back in the day when there was no cell phones, no way to get a hold of anybody. Here I am driving 450 miles on a car that's quitting, you know, and I got to get back home. Well, I made it back, you know. I mean, heck, I was 22 years old or something at the time, or 23. But some farmers have homemade gas tanks today. Now, be aware of this. This right here is a fuel pressure regulator on a V8 and an Expedition. And you can take a little snap ring out and pull that fuel pressure regulator out. Now, this little powder fine rust, this is a shop tip I wrote for Motor Age several years ago. It can work its way through the fuel filter. And those particles of iron oxide are so tiny, they'll go through a fuel filter, and they'll go in there and they'll either clog this up or they'll clog the injectors up after they've gone through the fuel filter. And whenever you see one like this, it'll usually be you know, somebody that's getting gas out of a big steel gas tank that they homemade. What it amounts to. And this powder fine rust, and testing fuel quality is really important, see that? And making sure that you got a good source of, clean source of fuel. I've seen clogged up injector like that. All right, now flex fuel vehicles, some of them use a fuel compensation sensor. No, that's right, not compensation, composition. Can't believe I screwed that word up in my head. That's it. If that sensor lies about how much alcohol is in the fuel, the PCM can overfuel and cause intermittent no starts and foul the plug. It takes more alcohol to start a cold engine than it does gas. So if you got E85, somebody's put some E85 in there, and that fuel composition sensor is going to tell the PCM, I've got this much alcohol, so I need to increase the pulse with this much more than I would for gas, and I'm going to put that much more in there. And we had this GMC in here that was a 94 model, I guess, I don't know, excuse me, 04, and it was a flex fuel vehicle, and sometimes it would start really hard, and it was wetting the plugs and all that. And so I actually looked at the scan tool, and I got a 45% alcohol reading, and I got under there and measured how many hertz it was. I don't remember those numbers right now, but anyway, the long and the short of it was telling a lie about how much alcohol was there, and that's why the thing was starting hard sometimes. I mean, sometimes it absolutely wouldn't start when it's cold. That's because it's having to put extra fuel in there, and it was putting instead of the mix it thought it was putting in, it's putting straight gas and it's fouling plug. Figuring that out on the way. So I called the owner and I says, what are y'all doing? What kind of fuel are you burning in this thing? Do you ever use E85? And they said, no, we always use just plain old gas. Well, I knew that I was being told a lie by the sensor. Well, that sensor, as that particular one I showed a picture of to start with, is a picture of the one we put on that truck, and it cost $700 at the dealer. Now you better be sure that's what it is. And I think the old one's laying over there somewhere behind you. But anyway, it ain't very big. But anyway, the fuel, the FCS bid reads a percentage, okay? Now, let's see, I'm gonna get past all that. Now this is what a weak ignition coil looks like. This is a little short video. Y'all are gonna enjoy hearing me talking in there. In a 2009 Dodge truck with a 5.9. All right, Joe, I want you to go spin the starter, and I'm gonna show you this spark, what it looks like. You'll get to see it in a minute. All right, we're checking the spark, got a test light grounded to the alternator. Test light's okay, it ain't gonna fight me through that. We're just going through that port to the alternator. Go ahead. But I can't stretch it over about that far. Okay, now we're gonna stop. We're gonna reconnect this, we're gonna leave red wires in each one of those. Red wire in each one. That's the primary lead that we're plugged into the wall. We're gonna have a different call. So we're gonna exit. I thought you said you cashed your check and you're a senior.
That would be nice.
Okay. All right. Now we're fiddling with this truck here, and we're doing a little video while we're with it. All right. Now what we want is we want this primary to not to be close to that secondary, right? Okay. This is sort of a dicey way to do this, but we're gonna do it anyway. All right. Now then, when we spin this over, we're gonna leave this other qualifier. Now let's watch the other qualifier. Come on, Joel. That look different?
Yeah.
All right, do it again. Do it again. See how far I'm stretching now, hot it looks? That is, this coil that we're here is weak and it's making it cut up and buck and snort whenever you're driving it. We put that one on there and drove it on, I guess, and it ran so smooth. In a 2009 Dodge truck with a 5.9. All right, Joe, I want you to go spin. All right, here you go. Pass an ASC test, boost your grade a letter. Can you pass an ASC test?
So I'm not trying.
Hmm?
I said, show enough can try.
Yep, just go over there, you gotta pay to take the test. You know the guy that was holding had the glasses a while ago, with the wide eyes, holding the hose? He took all of his the last semester he was in here and passed all 8 of them.
Yeah, Lee.
How much
He
it cost?
can't, well, those days it was $252 to take all the tests. But he came in there in my office and I want to take the ASE test. I said, which ones? He goes, all of them. I said, you know what, that's kind of expensive. He said, I got a debit card, man. And so we signed him up to take the ASE test right there online. He went to the test center. What you do is you walk in there and they, make you empty your pockets into a locker and they run a wand over here. They make you turn your pockets inside out. They make you pull your britches up, see if you got cheat sheets in your socks. And they, you go all over the place to try to, like they go out of their way to make sure that you ain't cheating on that test. And you go on a little computer, you sit in a little booth by yourself and you take that test. and all that. Now, you know, your ASE student certification test, the testing window opens up on that in March. But you guys are gonna be taking that too. I gotta, you know, run y'all, you know, you guys do that. That'll help you, but the ASE, he passed all 8 of them.
Hey, but how many questions do that be having on there?
They'll usually have about 60 questions the first time you take the test. As I said, when you re-up on them, like I have to do every 5 years, and I've been ASE certified now for 27 years straight. I got a little toolbox medallion. Every 5 years I've had to go re-up. I've never studied for an ASE test and I've never failed one. I don't know how you'd study for one. I really don't. I mean, you can actually, there's study guides you can get, you know, but there's actually free ASEstudyguides.com online. And you can go in there and take those tests and it'll actually, they really help you a lot. They don't cost anything to practice.
All the tests is like, when you have the 2 mechanics and then one on wrong.
Yeah, not all the questions. I mean, they've got quite a few Technician A and Technician B questions, like you're talking about. But there's also a bunch of questions that says, everything in this, every one of these answers is true except, they'll have some of them. And then they'll also have other questions where they have pictures. And they'll say, what is this guy doing in this picture? And you'll have some choices on that.
See, I ain't got no problem with all the other ones.
Yeah,
Just,
but on the ASE study guides, free ASE study guides.com, I was looking and they had a schematic drawn on there of the one like we were up on this board over here. They didn't even draw a schematic right on that one. I mean, most of those tests are okay, but not one way or another. What was the first emission control device ever used on a passenger car in the United States? Somebody tell me. The first emission control device ever used on a passenger car in the United States. Anybody know?
See?
PCV valve. In 1962, Chevrolet put a PCV valve on the car. Before that, the crankcase vapor just went out into the air. And it was just really bad in places like Los Angeles and Chicago where, you know, smog. Well, anyway, the PCV system pulls that crankcase blow by and processes it, and, you know, it comes out the exhaust clean. Matter of fact, this is what's funny. Right now, you can drive like a Duramax or a Power Stroke diesel. It's got particulate filters and use that, you know, exhaust fluid and all. You can drive one of those through downtown Los Angeles, I read somewhere the other day, and the air coming out the pipe is cleaner than what's going in. It actually is cleaning the air as it drives through the city. And that's a diesel, you know, with particulate filters. Most contemporary engines require spark plug replacement every what?
50, no, 80.
You'd be surprised how many of them call for it at 100,000 miles. And you remember the Explorer I told you about that had the same spark plugs in it for 238,000 miles before we changed them? And 100,000 miles pretty much is what it is now. Now, when I started working on cars, 12,000 miles about all you get out of that plug. Back in the 30s, whenever, and I didn't live back then, but back in the 30s, they had to rebuild an engine about every 10,000 miles. That's how fast they wore out.
Not too long ago, didn't we see somebody who was in there from when they first got the car?
That was weird, wasn't it?
What's that now?
It might have been on mine too.
I think yours had a spark plug on there that it came with.
Yeah. Well, yeah, yours had the spark plugs that came in it in your truck.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. And that truck, that was, anyway. This reading is A, too high, B, too low, C, just right, or D, unnecessary. We're measuring the center electrode resistance on the spark plug, just like Ford Motor Company said to do in their literature. I mean, I actually saw that at Ford Training Center and took a picture of that screen.
Have we ever measured a spark
Usually, this is supposed to have less than 8,000 ohms typically. And I always like to say, you know, when I put this picture in that magazine article I wrote about it, some champion spark plug engineer sent me a nasty letter after he read it. And he said, that's a stupid way to check spark plugs. You're supposed to use a scope. And I said, well, why does Ford put it in their training material if you're not supposed to do it? Well, the next time I got up here, I said a champion spark plug, just for the heck of it, and I ain't saying they're all like this, I took all of them out and put them on the bench and I measured them all, and they were between 2,000 and 17,000 ohms and everywhere in between. I mean, I don't know what the deal what that means, but I like for them to all be pretty close, and most of the time they'll be between 3,000 and 7,000 ohms, the ones that I've measured. This one only had 200 ohms. You notice there's not no K or an M in front of that? They're not supposed to be wide open, they're not supposed to be that shorted. Anyway, I replaced that, and I replaced the coil, you know. Question 4, what kind of vehicle is this? If you know your vehicles, you ought to be able to look at that little narrow thing and tell me if that's a Chevy, a Ford, a Chrysler, or a Peugeot.
I've never heard of Peugeot, so.
That's a French-made car. It's one of the cars that starts with P.
A,
I was gonna say Chevy too.
because it looks just like my Chevrolet Colorado truck that I used to have. Well, I never owned a Chevy, and it don't look like Ford.
So you're telling me that you're looking at fuses and relays and you say it looks just like my Chevy Colorado. That's really interesting. Here's how you tell. You see where it says auto shutdown? Chrysler's the only one that has that. And the auto shutdown relay, what's the purpose of the auto shutdown relay? Shuts the engine down, feeds the injectors, the coil, the alternator, provides power to the crank sensor, delivers reference voltage to the CP sensor. Actually, it powers the coil, the alternator field and the injectors. And some other solenoids and stuff. The point is, it's kind of like the power relay on a Ford, but not exactly. And that wire on these typically used to have a green wire with an orange stripe coming out of it. You'll see all the injectors being fed by this thing. So you need to know this, because if your injectors aren't being fed, you're gonna go to your automatic shutdown relay and you see what's going on with
Hey, Mr. Richard, why did they name that?
that. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm always thinking of the inertia switch on a Ford. And maybe that was Chrysler's answer to that somehow, but I can't make that work in my mind. Somebody somewhere, and some of you people listening by radio, probably know why they call that the auto shutdown relay. I've never known, and I worked at, when I was working at the dealer, we had the Jeep franchise and everything. And that's one of the things I noticed. They call it auto shutdown. Who knows? You can see how that's a question to throw you for a loop.
I'm talking
When
about.
I reach the point of repair, I'm waiting on parts, I should use that time to A, play games on my phone, B, find something productive to do, C, head for Hardee's, D, ask for a promotion and a raise, E, plan, or F, cop an attitude.
D sound good.
That's not a complicated problem, you know. That's why when I was at a dealer, I was always updating shop manuals, fixing battery chargers, blowing the dust out of the computers. I was always doing something to make it better for everybody else, you know what I'm saying? And we had 5 battery chargers, and I numbered them 1 through 5. And I'd say, anybody in here sees anything wrong with any of these battery chargers, tell me which number it was. I'll go find it. When I have time, I'll fix it. And I take them apart, put rectifiers in them, switches and circuit breakers, all that kind of stuff. The transformer don't ever go out on these bigger battery chargers. It's a stud in a motion.
D-A-I-T right there.
That's supposed to be find something productive to do. How many of you guys are really good to find something productive to do whenever you're waiting on something?
Most of the time.
Nobody. Everybody wants to sit here and piddle around and look up in the air with their mouth open or play with their phone and all that kind of stuff. Want to do an oil change, I should, A, get a cheater pipe and turn the drain plug clockwise so it turns round and round. I actually had a student that did that. I'm watching him and I see he's got a cheater pipe over here changing the oil on one of these old Crown Victorias. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? He said, huh? I said, what are you doing? He's got a cheater pipe and he's done with it and he's turning the plug round and round and it's just turning round and round. I said, what are you thinking about? Turn it the other way, and by some miracle it caught some threads and came out of there. I mean, we're talking terrifying, you know what I mean? That's the drain plug right there. Good catch. All right, how you doing?
Even though it's strong.
You ready to pull the gas tank off? Well, I don't know how much gas is in it, did you notice? You need to find out, because if it's full, we need to drain it. All right. Check the drain plug for distorted threads or a leaking gasket. That's a good plan. If you're taking the drain plug out and it's hard coming out so that you got to take it out with a wrench when it's already broke loose, you need another drain plug. Start the drain plug and walk away for a while. We don't do that. We don't start the drain plug and walk away for a while because we're never getting to tighten it up. Lower the car halfway and rotate the tires while the oil's draining. I don't like that. Personally, if you're just getting started. Now, if you're somebody that does this every day, you might make better time doing that. But I'm always feeling like if you mix these jobs up and they both got really important elements to them, you may forget really important elements like putting a wall in. Has anybody in here ever started one without a wall in it?
Yes.
Okay, don't go there.
You done that?
So you're supposed to take a nap in the trunk.
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny. when checking a no start, I should A, get stumped so the newspapers will write about it, listen for the fuel pump, check for power at the injectors, then check reference voltage. C, check the fuel pressure only if I can hear the pump running, or do B and C and then check for spark and injector pulse. Yeah, on a no start, you're gonna check your, spark first, and then your fuel pressure, you don't set the motor on fire. Okay? On a no start, if I hear the pump running, when I switch on the key, what do I know? PCM's powered up.